Great to see all of you here this afternoon. Welcome to the SCI-Arc graduation. You're not out quite yet. No. I have to say, I was thinking a little bit about this. This is really a propitious moment for SCI-Arc. Is that too complicated? A propitious moment, I'm not sure what would be a good analogy, but there are people who talk about the Kennedy administration as Camelot, or people who talk about Florence when Raphael and Da Vinci and Michelangelo were holding hands with the Pope. Things like that, when at a certain moment, a number of talents coalesce. Huh? Yeah? Is that okay? I didn't want to offend you. Talents coalesce, and the aggregate strengths of very unusual personalities come together and make a uniquely strong capacity. And in this case, I think SCI-Arc, and you can probably see this over the last few years, and certainly for the years to come, as far as I can look down the line, that this is a colossal moment and an incredible opportunity for us and for you to reimagine, as SCI-Arc always likes to do, what the future might come to be. And I think thinking about what are the characteristics of a SCI-Arc personality, if there were a generic persona who represented all of us in the aggregate. And I think in a positive way, I don't misunderstand the term, but there's an inordinate, but for us ordinate, maybe to some extent naive aspect of great self-confidence in our capacity to think and to work and to invent and to understand and to know that the world will move. And as it moves, SCI-Arc in urbanism, in architecture, has an opportunity to facilitate that movement, to add to it, to contribute to it, to make the world other than it is. SCI-Arc can do that. I think the other side of that discourse is what, I don't know exactly what the word would be. I want to say self-effacing, humility, but this is not quite right. But a sense that that the discussion goes on, the discussion continues, the adventure keeps moving, and we don't have a way to say it will stop here, and we know where it will stop, and we know what the stop will mean. We can hypothesize. I think we've developed an incredibly poignant, thoughtful, profound, critical intellectual environment. We have that. So we have a world that looks into the future optimistically, which also looks into the world in a self-effacing way, so that we know we'll do what we can do, we'll move the discussion, but in the end, the discussion is not entirely in our hands, it'll continue to move. And we like that, because the SCI-Arc subject is always what comes next. One other point, some of you may know this and some of you may not, and now this pertains to our speaker this afternoon. About 12 years ago, SCI-Arc came to? 12 years ago, SCI-Arc moved from the periphery, from the perimeter, from the suburbs to the center of the city. And there was a very particular motive for doing that. And it's important to understand what we did and why we did what we did briefly. And essentially, SCI-Arc could see, could feel that the city would move, that the city would change. And the quintessential point of that change was the meeting here in downtown of so many different constituencies, ethnicities, points of view, cultures, and so on. And this is not just the standard promo for diversity, but if you look at the city, and you look at the city as it extends to San Pedro and into the valley and to the west side, I think what we tend to see is that as it extends laterally, and this is for the moment a lateral city, that it tends to homogenize more and more, meaning whatever is there, wherever we go on the perimeter, tends to be more predictable, more consistent, more homogeneous. But where it gets intricate and where it gets in some ways tense and where it gets complicated and where it has to move and where it will move is where we are today. So this is why we came downtown. And I would say to Professor Garcetti, we came down to help in the ways that we can if that opportunity becomes available. SCI-Arc is ready, is willing, is interested, is intent on participating in the ways that it can, whenever it can, however it can, either on its own initiative or in response to Mayor Garcetti's office, in order to see what we can do in the process of the city moving to become something we're only starting to reimagine. Like SCI-Arc, whatever the pedigree, the history of Los Angeles is ahead of us and in front of us. And I want to thank Mayor Garcetti today for taking a little bit of time to discourse briefly on what his plans may be for the future of the city, how he understands how SCI-Arc might fit into that context. And if you forgive me, maybe you won't forgive me, let me just give you my sense of what he's done and what he brings to LA. In the first place, a new voice, a younger voice, a vigorous voice, a refreshing voice, number one. Number two, a clear commitment to architecture and the content of architecture and design, manifest in many different circumstances, a clear commitment to that. I think if you listen to his discussion, and he has to, in small ways, so he cares about trash and potholes and the kinds of sidewalks that are discontinuous and landscape and the kinds of problems that in a prosaic way, in a day-to-day way, affect all of us who live in this city or any city. But I think the most intriguing and the most compelling aspect of the mayor and his program, as he's outlined it to date, is his idealism and his optimism. And those qualities are very much shared with us. Everyone is sitting here, everyone in the audience, and those who will come after us. So with a dose of pragmatism and a component of idealism, please welcome Mayor Eric Garcetti to SCI-Arc. Have fun.
Yes. Thank you so much. From one Eric to another, I appreciate the kind words. I heard discourse and brief. I don't know. Tom Gilmore told me I could be as long as I want because one of the speakers didn't show up, right? No, this is, I'm so honored to be here today, and I want to thank everybody for this opportunity, and I do want to thank you for the generosity and the precision of that introduction. It's unlike any I've had since I've been mayor, and my mom would have been proud to hear that. She's don't worry, she's alive, she's just not here. I want to thank Eric and the entire SCI-Arc team for what you have been, what you have built, and what you have become. And inviting me to be with you, the graduates, here on this momentous occasion. And I also want to thank you for your presence, your physical presence, and also your academic presence, what you represent and what you are, both the hardscape and the ideascape that you bring to bear in this, and I know I'm a little bit prejudiced, but the greatest city on the face of the earth. In many ways, you both physically and educationally reflect this inflection point that we find ourselves in the history of this city. I'm a typical Angelino, which is to say, none of us are typical. Italian last name, half Mexican, half Jewish, fourth generation. That's how I got elected, by the way. But when we see, Korean short rib tacos and kosher burritos and the collision of the mashup culture that we have here in Los Angeles, we all know there is no such thing as a typical Angelino. To be atypical is indeed to earn that title. But your dynamism here physically as well in the heart of the burgeoning arts district, which, as you said, at a time you sensed something maybe before it happened, is perhaps the greatest example of this city's renewal and repurposing. I've often said that Los Angeles, our city, is a city of second chances, and downtown is getting a second chance. And you think about where we are right now, I always like to breathe in the moments that we commemorate, whether it's a graduation or a wedding, a birthday. You think about where we are physically. Think about the freeways that surround us here for a moment, because the freeways mirror where the great streets once were. And the great streets are right over where the Spanish roads were, which were built on top of where the old Indian pathways were, which mirrored where the watershed of Los Angeles is. So we may think these pieces and these lines to be new, and surely we are bringing a new pen to bear on top of them, but they are ancient lines, eternal lines that we trace over and that we rethink and reimagine. Today's graduates, I want to congratulate you for all you have done, the challenges that you have met, the barriers that you have overcome, the expertise that you have learned that is reflected in the diplomas you are about to receive. Very soon, this space will be filled with applause for you, but I'm going to do a little audience participation because none of us are here alone, and you have friends and family who have made it possible for you to be here. And I'd ask you actually for a moment just to rise and give them a round of applause and thank them for the work that they have done to allow you to graduate today. Come on, get up, it'll be great. Thank you, mom, dad, brother, sister, cousin, husband, wife, aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa. Thank you, because this is your graduation as well. And what you have done here today, together with your family, the course of studies that you have completed here is an achievement that is of the highest magnitude. I'm proud for you, I'm proud for our city, and I'm proud for your families. Frank Gehry once said that architecture should speak of a time and place, but yearn for timelessness. And it's so with that spirit that I'm here before you, to speak of this moment and this place, but to also try to connect with something that is eternal. To connect you with the larger impulse that led you to seek something more significant. To, yes, build something that might connect with or even be one day close to eternal. And as I mentioned, you are graduating at this interesting inflection point in our history. The history of this city, but also our history as human beings in the world. Your success will be defined as much, and your chosen career demands that you change with the times. Paradoxically, change has now become the new status quo, and adaptability is the new normal. It is not so much even for a city when I think as mayor that I have a fixed point on the horizon that I want to lead the city towards. I want us to be nimble enough year to year to change direction to find our pathway, and you too will need to do the same. Think about Pablo Picasso when he became one of the first painters to go through these radically different periods, something that artists didn't do. They were, of course, they evolved over time, but they didn't have these radical different chapters in their life. Now that's what's expected. In your careers, you'll work for many different entities. You might look at buildings completely different than you did 3 or 4 years before. And so the dramatic change now requires not evolutionary refinement, but constant revolution that seems to rule the day. But this approach isn't just reserved for a few trend-leading practitioners and artists. It is a basic necessity for all of us, not just architects and creative professionals, but all of us even in government. And I find this moment very exciting, this exact moment as well as this chapter that we're in. As a fellow urban planner, I look at cities today. There's a great book out by Ben Barber who wrote the book Jihad versus McWorld called What If Mayors Ruled the World? Besides loving the title, I also think it's a fitting point that national governments are broken. We look to Washington, and in the 60s, as our cities burned, cities went to Washington to be saved. As I brought 18 mayors to the White House in October, I said very respectfully to our president, "It is our cities that will save this country." Because here we have to solve problems. And I talked to the mayor of Rio de Janeiro, maybe you can get more out of that conversation than a member of Congress that represents me here. Because we are bringing ideas and currents together, whether it's on the economy, whether it's on transportation, whether it's on planning and architecture, whether it's on ecology, that demands that we share as humanity the wisdom that we learn. SCI-Arc itself was the creation of those who would not and could not accept the world the way it was, in architecture and in design. They wanted a new freedom and a radical independence. And it helped move the profession forward before it was ready to do so. Not that ratings matter that much because they're so subjective, but if you look at the rapid ascension of now how the profession sees SCI-Arc, you've seen that they have caught up with you just as the city has come back to this location. As the world has moved towards you and this approach, as you sit squarely now at the center of the profession, admired, praised, and needed by the builders of today, take that responsibility and move it forward. Today you will leave SCI-Arc with the skills necessary to add your work to that list, to shape Los Angeles and points beyond now and forever, to create places that cause people to think, to feel, to gasp, to come together, but also that's rooted in their humanity. And I want to point out that we haven't talked about buildings yet because it's certainly easy to think of what you do in that frame, but shaping cities requires much, much more. In fact, buildings are maybe even only the punctuation marks of the prose that we must write. So I have 4 points to leave you with today as graduates, and as the community surrounding the graduates too. My first point is to be fearless. Look behind you, and those buildings weren't here just a few years ago. The idea of revitalizing the river was not here. And as mayor, I want a city government that mirrors that same fearlessness and that I hope you bring to your work as well. To be bold in embracing change, to be bold in your design, to be bold in your dreams. That's why we're pursuing just behind here a $1 billion plan to revitalize that river which gave us our name. Before there was a pueblo de Los Angeles, there was a río de Nuestra Señora la Reina de Los Angeles de Porciúncula. Imagine the potential if we free that body of water from its concrete tomb, especially for a city that is now the most densely populated metro area in the country, including the New York metro area. So be fearless. Never let people say that you can't do something, and never think that something is impossible. But my second point is to be humble. I want to take the example of CicLAvia, the great closing. I hope most, if not all of you, participated. CicLAvia certainly comes by here. For those who don't know, it is the closing down of our streets every few months and soon every month to be car-free, and people can walk and bike and skateboard and experience the city. Our streets, in fact, are our largest open space opportunity, compromising 7,500 centerline miles and 15% of the land within the city of Los Angeles. And get this, even in our worst traffic, 95% of that space doesn't have a vehicle on it. So when we close a CicLAvia route to cars during that time, LA has an open space many times larger than New York Central Park, a space that's dynamic and changing. But here's where I bring it back to humility. There is no center. People always ask, where's the starting line? Or where's the finish line? And we very consciously said there is none. It is a space that we bound, but it is up to you to define. So as you're fearless in your profession, know that you're not the center of anything. There is no center. And to stay humble in your profession, to stay humble in your work. Is architecture about creating great buildings, or is it about the Issei Shrine, which every 20 years is destroyed and rebuilt? Is it about putting something up there that you can see your grandchildren looking at? Or is it another Burning Man? And as I came here, I always wanted to go to Burning Man. I'm really glad to finally be here. Which brings me to point number 3. Be fearless, be humble, but learn to listen. I know I'm not modeling that well right now because I'm talking. Mayors are often asked to talk, but I tell students who come and visit me and friends that the most important skill in politics and the most important skill as design professionals is to learn how to listen. When I was a professor, I used to always remember in classes, there's that front row, and you loved having them because you'd ask a question, they'd raise their hands, hey, and they would say, I have the answer to every question. And then 3 or 4 classes in, I would ask a question, and then there would be somebody in the back, it was usually a woman, who would raise her hand, and everybody would spin around, almost forgotten that she was in the classroom. And she would speak and answer with such power to the question I asked that it changed everyone's perspective, including the professors that day. Because for 2 or 3 classes, instead of speaking first, she had been thinking and processing and listening. If you come in knowing the world and your ideas being the tip of the spear, you will never be successful. But the good listener, the great listener, is the great artist, is the great leader. We have an initiative right now that mirrors that called the Great Streets Initiative. We're trying to go back to communities, this incredible collection of villages, over 180 neighborhoods that comprise just the city of Los Angeles, let alone the metro area, and to ask a Canoga Park or a Limbert Park or a Boyle Heights what it needs to see on its main street, that backbone of the community, what urban acupuncture we can bring as a organizing entity and as the government directly to bring people together to say what it feels like when you walk past a empty parking lot at night as opposed to a window that has something displayed in it. When the sidewalks are so narrow or so ugly looking that you would never put a table out there to get a cup of coffee or to have a meal. When you listen to a city, you find its soul. And it was Aristotle who said in his writing in Politics that the city came into being to preserve life, but it exists for the good life. In other words, cities were built to be secure, but don't build fortresses. Build a place in which once we find a safe place to be, like this city, which hasn't been safer since 1949, that we find and define what the good life means to each one of us. A concert that stirs our soul. A dinner in which we stare into the eyes of someone and fall in love and spend our lives with them. The moment that we have when we hire somebody and the feeling of not only providing for yourself but for others. The city and the good life is in your hands, not through the walls and the visions that you create in the physical structures that you will manifest, but in the space in between them, the programming you bring to them, and the spirit with which you imbue them. So be fearless, be humble, and learn to listen. But boldness cannot be arrogant. Boldness cannot be isolated. And boldness needs to know how to follow as much how to lead. Which brings me to my fourth and final admonition, which is to make sure when you do these things, because you could be fearless and you could be humble and you could learn to listen, but your work will mean nothing if it doesn't come from a place from the heart. And it's to lead with love. And you might say, well, why is the mayor telling me that? This isn't a graduation for social workers. This isn't some place where we're looking at folks who are about to become police officers or firefighters. We're design professionals. But we all know that what we do and ultimately what we seek in our lives is to connect with each other. Not just to be the new page of an architectural journal, not to just be at the cutting edge. Those things are necessary in order to bring back to a very old-fashioned value, to lead with love and to connect a city with itself. As you embark in your careers, to be fearless, to be humble, to learn to listen and to lead with love will ultimately be how we rebuild a city, how we rebuild a world. And as you embark on your careers, remember that places are about people. Of course, function must guide form, but your task isn't to design in the abstract. It is design in the concrete. It is to design for the flesh and blood that will inhabit it. So in this great city, in this city of angels, we graduate a class of angels ready to fly, to soar and to define your good life and the good life for those whose lives you will touch. And at the end of our days, we will remember two things on our time on earth: who we knew and what we did. Keep those relationships and treasure them, of whom you knew during this time in this great school. And go out there and leave behind something on this earth that is unlike anything that we have seen before. The combination of listening and humility, of fearlessness and love, and certainly we will see a world that we all treasure. Thank you so much.
I want to thank the mayor again for his words, both practical and pragmatic, and as we said initially, idealistic. And for a constituency like SCI-Arc, where we can put together both technical and practical considerations in the process of making buildings and not be uncomfortable with references to Aristotle and to the Ise shrine. And I think this gives you the sense of amalgamation of pieces in an unusual personality coming from the voice of the mayor and his vantage point on what the city portends to become. And I want to thank him again for his leadership and his contribution today. On your program, would you like to clap for the mayor again? Thank you very much. On your program, you'll note Greg Lynn, who we expected to speak today, and last weekend had a pressing, of the most pressing kind, family emergency, had to leave the city, so he won't be speaking today. The next speaker is Anthony Mori, and we don't, for those of you who don't know or don't recognize, there's not a litany or a retinue of standard speakers or speaker types. And we try to vary the program from year to year based on particular attributes or opportunities that come from the SCI-Arc community. And today we have a graduating student, and occasionally we've done this, Anthony Mori, who has his own vantage point, which is more likely to reflect your vantage point in a sense. So please welcome Anthony Mori, student speaker to SCI-Arc.
Oh, can I use this or?
Whatever you like.
Is this usable? Does this work? All right. Thanks, Eric. When I was asked to give a few comments today, I was both humbled and anxious. I felt as if we had just gotten to the end of our own story that was long in the making. But I soon realized that those stories were still being written and the climax had not even been hinted at yet. Yet here I was, trying to find a way to understand everyone's characters, their nuances, stories, and all the thoughts that we have had, will have, or will want to have. So I wondered what advice some people would give me. I thought, what would Moss say? I couldn't even create something as incoherent as Moss sounds at points, so I moved on. What would Kipnis say? I wasn't sure, but I felt like it ended up being something along the lines of me not being smart enough to talk about anything at all. Hernan? Nope, he just told me to shut up and not talk at all in the first place. And Dwayne, he'd just say, why bother talking when you can draw something? So empty-handed, I moved on. Soon after, I came across my student ID and it had a picture of me, but I didn't recognize it immediately. I tried to replay the last couple of years, how I felt and what I was taking away with it. And I thought, how did we fly through all the worries, sleepless nights, celebrations, arguments, successes, and failures? And I couldn't find one single moment that added up to all the emotions that I had. Each one memory turned into one, turned to two, turned to three, and added up to me standing here today, with all of us ready to start our new stories. I was no longer the same person that took that picture, and neither are we that sit here today. We grew, we challenged ourselves, and now we're ready to leave those ideas behind. Something changed us here dramatically along the way, and I can guarantee that it wasn't a project, a hatch, a corner issue, or a form in any way, but it was the sum of moments and the conversations that came along with them. We never noticed the perfect symphony of life-changing events that were occurring right in front of us while we were wondering what paper to print on. Being here let us erase, rewrite, and create new novels of our lives. It allowed us to become the hero or the villain in our own stories. And characters are people that we watch, people we relate to and we view from the outside. But I challenge us to be authors, those that can change a path, a story with the whim of inspiration. We learned how to make worlds in our minds. We understood how to create them, destroy them, and rebuild them. So I wondered, if the 4-year-old version of myself were to meet me today, what would he think? Would he make me out to be what he wanted? Would I have let him down in any way? Would I see him and would I still even be able to relate? Would we both look up to the clouds and see the same mysteries, the same floating faces, pirate ships, or fighting bears? Or would he think of me as a friend, one that could guard his unreachable fortress made from wood and leaves? I hope so. Or would he just see me as another adult in autopilot through the haze of life? The first character, the first main memory that I have here while being at SCI-Arc was a professor named Eric Garcetti. For those of you who don't know, he passed away this year, sadly. And when I went to a ceremony and heard the stories, the memories of just a part of who he was, I left in awe. I was bewildered that even though he was gone, I was somehow getting to know him better and better. Stories that I never knew were there, and random moments of hilarity that confounded me even until today. So I could say with pretty high confidence that Eric's 4-year-old version would have been his best friend. And at some points, even older Eric would have told his younger self to lighten up and not take things so seriously. And that's because life is an art. It's meant to inspire others to live, to see it, to find joy in the smallest things. Because happiness has no scale. Joy is not limited to your level of success, and nothing is given. We live through every decision, and we live through every non-decision. Those small moments are what make the big ones fantastic. And it's to never allow yourself to see the same thing twice, and always look for the things that had never been. To have no interest in knowing anything for sure, because then you'd only find ways to disprove it. With that, we can write our own stories, and no one else can be the author. Eric showed us that sometimes the best way to find yourself is to get completely lost. And that's what being here at SCI-Arc did. It forced us to get lost, to see a mirror, to face ourselves, our weaknesses, and push forward. There was a time that nothing in this world could not be true. When knowing something didn't make the rest of the world more banal. When your imagination was truer than your eyes. How many times as a child did you sit on the edge of your bed and know with all the truth in your heart that if you stepped off that bed, you were landing in shark-infested waters? Or how many times did you know you could fly if you tried? Or you could run faster of any car if you really wanted to? So what would your 4-year-old version tell you? Most likely something along the lines of, don't settle, and don't let knowing something stop you from questioning it in the first place. Don't let fact tear you from fiction. Don't let answers destroy your urge to ask more and more questions, and only realize that nothing is out of reach. Just that point's a little hard to get to. Ideas are calm, but history is hysterical, and we can't let that change our motives. We owe it to ourselves to push these limits, to continue to push these limits, and to be our own author, and to not allow ourselves to become characters in somebody else's story. So in closing, I'll leave you with a quote. A man tells his stories so many times that he becomes the stories. They live on after him, and in that way he becomes immortal. Thank you.
What a perfect way of following Anthony. I'd like to give him another round of applause because that was fantastic. This is a real segue into what Anthony is saying, because one of the real differences that we at SCI-Arc are always searching for, a student whose ambition matches by their character and services to the SCI-Arc community. And we all know, as Anthony was just described, how easy it is to be completely overwhelmed by the work, by your speculative work, by how you're challenged to think, and how you keep on continuing to do more and more production, better detail, better drawings, better models. So it is also important for us that you are recognized as a member of our community, and that you are a member of a larger community, both in school and in life. And so we want to recognize those students who are living that balance and that dream. So the first award that I would like to present is the SCI-Arc Service Award to students who have made outstanding contribution in the area of service to the SCI-Arc community. And this has always been one of the most difficult decisions for our faculty and for the administration, because we all have our favorite. This year, I would like to have you come up when I call your name. In the BR program, the SCI-Arc Service Award goes to Manori Samantika Sumanasinge, and Alexander Torres Chang. In the graduate program, the award goes to Taryn Bone in MArc 1 program, and Austin Sampson in the MArc 2 program.
Thank you.
Now this is, the next award is the Alpha Rho Chi Medal. Since 1914, Alpha Rho Chi, the National Professional Fraternity for Architecture and the Allied Arts, has promoted the profession of architecture by encouraging students to excel. Each year, this medal was provided to School of Architecture throughout the country to be awarded to the graduating senior who has shown an affinity for leadership, who is willing to perform services for the school and gives promises of real professional merit through his or her attitude and personality. This year, the Alpha Rho Chi Medal is awarded to Anthony Morey, and Jeffrey Holstad in the MArc 2 program. Who also did a fantastic project. Congratulations.
Thanks, Meg. Thank you.
And finally, I'd like to present the Henry Adams Medal and Certificate Award by the American Institute of Architects, formerly called the School Medals. This program, which also began in 1914, I don't know what happened in 1914, but so this was awarded for general excellence in architecture throughout the 4-year course to graduating students of architecture school recognized by the Institute of SCI-Arc. I would like to present first the Henry Adams Certificate of Merit which is awarded to Christopher Nielsen in the BARC program. And Scotty Zane Carroll in the MARC program. And for the top academic ranking graduating student, the AIA Henry Adams Medal is awarded to Mateus Mulugeta Asfar. And Garrett Santo in the MAC1 program. And now I would like to invite John Enright, Chair of the Undergraduate Programs, and Hernan Diaz Alonso, Chair of the Graduate Program, to come up to present the diplomas.
We are first, right?
Yes.
Yes. John and I, we don't get to talk, but we get to do the coolest part of the ceremony, which is to give the diplomas. So, we're going to start with the BARCs. And Hazelin Cruz Aquino. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction for Gelareth Arbak. Felipe Alfredo Arias. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction for Matthew Muliquieta Asfa. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction for Rachel Elizabeth Bagan. Kyle Branchesi. Alexander Torres Chang. Aaron Chin. Hyun Kyung Christina Cho. Hang De Deep. Chu Cheng Feng. Farnan Gaffari. Gaffar, sorry. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction for Jesus Guerrero. Aida Hassan. Clifford Ho. Okay. Su Young Jessica Hong. Ariel Hugh Lamb Ip. Esteban Jauregui. Christopher Centeno Jimenez. Hang in there. right. Dae-Hyun Kim. Eugene Kim. Yu Sik Sang Shaw. Oh, sorry. This used to be easier. Bachelor is getting more international. Chung Bing Lang. Nope. Okay. Nila Muliaveti Lim. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction for Ricardo Santo. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction for Uriel Alexander Lopez. Michelle Karen Lozano. Priyank Mehta. Wilfredo Mejia. SCI-Arc graduation for distinction for Anthony Morey.
Can I get a hug this time? Can I get a hug? Ah, there we go. I knew it happened sooner.
You get one hug every 5 years, okay? Kevin Thing Cao Gunyang. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction for Christopher Nilsson. Edwin Norian. Shane Rainer Roth. Jack Warner Richardson. Sean Ramf. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction for Larissa Russ. Juan Miguel San Pedro. Scott Starr. All right. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction, that's what matters. Manori Samathinga Sumanenshinge. Okay, I cannot catch a break. Ya John Say, Allen Say, there you go. Jason Velasquez. Bowen Wu. Jing Yang. Yang Craig Yu Shang. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction for Jing Yang. Kaiji Yang.
Okay, we'll be starting with the MARC 1 program. Juan Carlos Baez Velez. Leila Bebahani. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction, Taryn Bone. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction, Scotty Zane Carroll. Lord Evan Saniza. Han Wan Chang. Yen Po Chen. Dustin Allen Colombato. Ryan Daniel Ekstrom. David Anson Forrest. Morgan Wright Gerard. Good job, brother. Suki T. Ho. Justin Hollingsworth. Ryan William Hopkins. Julian Ru Huang. Rosa Jafari Sagani. Kyungju Kim. Brielle Aname Koteki. Eric Lalonde. Sofia Lapina. Yu Li. Chengfeng Lin. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction, Rogu Lu. Sarah Ann Loy. Cheng Lu. Ting Ting Lu. Julian Ma. Zachariah A. Micheli. Rutbe Mizai. Sarah Mumzaz. Jessica Moore. Johnny Willian Ying. Sergio Armachea. Daniel Park. Peter Sungju Park. Wong Yuen Park. Hannah Goodale Pavlovich. Sorry, that was graduation with distinction.
Anna.
It was misplaced. Shamiki Liana Pettis. Gregory Christopher Polvey. Ralph Loren Sansano. Mark Andrew Santa Ines. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction, Garrett T. Santo. Tommy Shao. Jordan Squires. Felicia Torres. Justin Joseph Ulmer. Kirsten Warenberg Klee. Jennifer Wu. Xia Shu. The following are in the MARC 2 program. Mohammed Matuk Alehane. Ziad Mohammedanor Ashur. Ashra Turkey Tang H. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction, Peter Edward Brand. Lungchi Chang. Hongyu Chen. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction, Nanyen Chen. Qingyu Chen. Yan Chen. Andrew Sulki Chow. Jun Ding. Lu Fan. Mona Omar Elehan. Lawrence Vaughn Griffin. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction, Jeffrey Halstead. Nicole Marie Harder. Haibo Hay. Kiem Hon Ho. Anushka Javen. Daniel Jens Karas. Camille Kos. Mustafa Kustur. Solar Labri. Mengwen Lee. Qingwen Li. Jaegon Lim. Wengqin Lin. Wu Liu. Yige Liu. Yu Liu.
Wave again. Okay. There you go.
Xie Liu. Ryan Vincent Manning. Ana Paula Munoz Holkin. Lily Norman Sori. Vestales Estefania Pizarro. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction, Austin Sampson. Chuangji Shen. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction, Harrison Samuel Steinbuch. Daiki Tutsumi. Carlos Ricardo Vargas Romero. Emmanuel Tesfaye Vodmikhail. Hao Wu. Xing Chen Wu. Xiao Tian Wu. Yulun Wu. Wenshan Xie. Jiani Zhu. The following are in the ESTM, post-professional program. Sayed Ehsan Ayatollah. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction, Daniel John Kevin. Salvador Francisco Cortez Hulch. Oksana Andreevna Gritsai. Brennan Douglas Huller.
Thank you, sir.
Nels William Long. Gonzalo Padilla Villamizar. Puyan Ruriakamaki. Abhishek Prakash Sakpal. Georgios Smirlis. Stavriani Tomara. Nikita Truvanov. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction, Uri Wegman. Last but not least, this is for the sci-fi postgraduate program. Somaher Omar Al-Sfayer. Jaehong Lee. SCI-Arc graduation with distinction, David Marco Siskar.
So we come now to the most poignant, propitious moment of the program for this reason. We want to acknowledge the thesis project and the students who have performed exceptionally well with great distinction, perspicacity, imagination, tenacity, and whatever else I left out. What the thesis program is for both undergraduates and graduates is worth understanding so that you will understand why we associate such importance with the promise of what's given back to us in these projects. In the undergraduate program, students attend for 4.5 years. They go to exhibits, they listen to lectures, they attend studios and seminars, and take in the environment, each in his or her own way. of what SCI-Arc has to offer, or in the aggregate, what the community has to offer to all of you about what architecture is or was or could be or should be. And at the end of that time, in the graduate program, it's 3.5 years, as you know. In the end of that program, or the end of that time, you have, the grads and the undergrads, an opportunity to come back to us and say to us, this is what you told us, this is what we understand, here's what you left out, here's what's coming next, here's what we anticipate as architecture or urbanism in the future. And since we have so much confidence in your capacity to move architecture into the future, this is, in a sense, a way of handing the baton from us to you, and you, in turn, will pass it along to people who come after you. So, as I said, the acknowledgement of these efforts is critical to us and to you and to the program, and the recognition is very important. Before I go through the names, let me also acknowledge Dwayne Euler, who monitors the undergraduate thesis program under the direction of John Enright, and Elena Manfredini, who does the same for the graduate program under the direction of Hernan Diaz Alonso, without defining what under the direction may mean or not mean. But those are the primary characters who deliver these programs and are responsible for these programs to the SCI-Arc community. So the first, thank you, Mr. Rotundi. So there are a sequence of awards. I'll read the names of Merit Undergraduate Thesis Award recipients. And would you please stand when your name is read? Stephanie, so the project will show up on it? Yeah, okay. So at least in an abbreviated way, the acknowledgement of the student and the acknowledgement of the work should appear simultaneously, so we'll see. So the first Merit Undergraduate Thesis Award is Uriel Alexander Lopez. Second, Sue Yun Jessica Hong. Third, Shane Reiner Roth. Next, Jing Yan. Next, Kyle Branchisi. Are you surprised, Kyle? Next, what the hell? Anthony Morey. Next, Mateos Mulugeta Asfa. Next, Hung Thi Diep. Thank you all very much. Congratulations. The next list are the Merit Graduate Thesis Awards given today. And as you know, in a week or so, we have an exhibition and a discussion looking forward, looking backwards. So these projects will be exhibited, all of the following projects will be exhibited in the gallery, and we'll have a friendly discussion. the kind of discussion that SCI-Arc, of course, specializes in. So there'll be a friendly discussion. Indeed, the following students are recipients. Julian Rui Huang. Please stand. Morgan Wright Garrard. Han Yuan Cheng. Nan Yen Chen. Sofia Lapina. You have to act like you anticipated it, yeah? Garrett T. Santo. Daki Sut Sumi. Jordan Squires. Thank you. Stephanie, was I supposed to hand those out? Holy hell. Sorry. So afterwards at the barbecue, all of you whose names were just read will get a certificate that acknowledges the merit thesis. Next time. Okay. There are two other awards, so you people will have to come up here so I don't completely barbecue this. The first is the Best Undergraduate Thesis Award, which comes with monetary compensation, let's say. And the Best Undergraduate Thesis goes to Ji Yang. The Best Graduate Awards. As many of you know, Frank Gehry gave us a substantial grant several years ago to fund the financial aspect of this award. And I dug out a quote from the Greek historian who you all know and love called Thucydides, and the quote which accompanies the work that was done and the prize which is awarded from Thucydides is the following: "They were born never to live in peace and quiet themselves and to prevent the rest of the world from doing so." So with that admonition or compliment, the following people please step forward. Hannah Goodale Pavlovich. Jeffrey Halstead. Mustafa Kutsur. Thanks, Sarah. Don't get hurt. Whoa. I think somehow we've negotiated our way to the conclusion. Please, the people whose names were read, so this is not facetious, this is serious. The names who were read with the merit awards, undergrad and grad, would you please come up directly after we conclude, and I'll give you your just rewards. And my my apologies. Let me thank, I did acknowledge Dwayne and Elena for their special work for the thesis. I think it's important to understand for all of us who stand up here and have stood here in one form or another in different manifestations at different places at different times, that when we say what SCI-Arc is about is what comes next, and this is substantially true, there is also a yesterday, not only mañana, but a yesterday, and as we often say, what we do here today is built on the works of students and faculty and directors who have brought us to this position today. And so it's important to acknowledge Ray Cappy, Mike Rotundi, Neil Denari as earlier directors who helped to shape the discourse, which of course we continue to reshape. Graduation speaker Mayor Garcetti, who I think contributed an essential kind of human insight that however sophisticated we are with various technical tools, means, software, and so on, that whatever we do and in whatever way we do it, that work sits on an altogether human, all too human premise. I think he communicated that. It's worth remembering and enduring. Greg Lynn in absentia, who has some personal difficulties, but I want to thank him, and I'm sure we'll hear from him in the future. Anthony Mori, who walked away with enough prizes today. Ming Fung, John Enright, Hernan Diaz Alonso, who you all know and revere. Elena and Dwayne, who I mentioned, Frank and Berta, who I mentioned, and Marcelo and Georgina, who designed the pavilion that will stand here for another couple of years. And to all of you who have supported us and helped us put together a group of students who moves now into the future, thank all of you, the best to all of you. See you soon, and good luck.